the hegemony battlecruiser. Unyielding mandate pierced the darkness of the Corellian void, its sensor arrays sweeping methodically through the asteroid field. Commander Voskar stood on the command deck, mandibles clicking with impatience. "Report," he demanded, his exoskeletal fingers tapping against the polished obsidian of his command terminal. "Unusual energy signature detected at coordinates 447-982-013, Commander," replied Lieutenant Mavis, her compound eyes reflecting the luminous displays before her. "Configuration unknown, not matching any hegemony, confluent, or Dreslian designs." Voskar's antenna twitched with interest. The Corellian void was technically unclaimed space, but the hegemony had maintained de facto control for 17 cycles. Any unidentified vessel represented either opportunity or threat, possibly both. "Magnify and analyze," he ordered. The main view screen shifted, focusing on a distant object partially concealed behind a tumbling asteroid. The ship was angular, utilitarian, with none of the elegant curves or biological integration common to most spacefaring civilizations. Its hull was a dull, matte gray that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "Primitive design," Voskar observed dismissively. "Likely a newcomer species. Initiate comprehensive scan protocol. I want to know their capabilities before they even realize we've found them." "Compliance, Commander," Lieutenant Mavis acknowledged, activating the unyielding mandate's primary scanning array. Initiating full-spectrum analysis. The battlecruiser's powerful sensors lanced out across the void, bathing the unknown vessel in invisible energies, probing its structure, composition, and systems. The bridge crew waited with professional detachment, expecting the standard results: power output, weapon capability assessments, life sign readings. Instead, alarms erupted across every console. "Commander!" Mavis's normally composed voice edged toward panic. "The vessel! It's activating!" The gray ship had suddenly come alive, internal lights flaring to full brightness. What had appeared to be random hull irregularities were now clearly weapon ports sliding open. "They couldn't have detected our scan," Voskar said incredulously. "That's technologically impossible for a ship of that construction level." "Sir, they're hailing us on all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Prelek. On screen, Voskar ordered, straightening his posture, prepared to engage in first contact protocol. The view screen flickered, revealing a bipedal creature with flat features and exposed skin. The alien wore some form of uniform, but it was the cold intensity in its eyes that caught Voskar's attention. "Hegemony vessel," the creature spoke, its translator rendering its harsh language into standard galactic. "This is Captain Imaris, Renth of the Terran Federation warship Vigilant Horizon. You have initiated an unauthorized penetrating scan of a military vessel, which under Federation Naval Code 15.3.7 constitutes an act of aggression." Voskar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "We meant no aggression. This is simply standard procedure in unclaimed space." The human's expression didn't change. "Perhaps in hegemony protocol. In human space, scanning a warship without prior communication is considered the equivalent of aiming weapons. You have 30 seconds to power down all active sensors and withdraw to a distance of 50,000 kilometers. "Human space?" Voskar's antennae flared. "This is the Corellian void, under hegemony protection for 25 seconds, the human interrupted. "Your scan has already mapped portions of our defensive systems. This cannot be undone. Your compliance now will determine whether this becomes a diplomatic incident or something more severe." Voskar felt the first tremors of concern. The creature's confidence was unsettling. "We will comply, but under protest. This region will require formal diplomatic weapon systems activating on the human vessel," shouted Tactical Officer Nexri. "Impossible," breathed Voskar. "They couldn't have charged weapons this quickly from standby." Captain Renth's voice was calm. "Our weapons were never on standby, Commander. That's the first thing your scan should have told you. If you'd known what to look for. Voskar ordered an immediate withdrawal, but it was already too late. The Terran warship erupted into motion, accelerating at a rate that defied the hegemony's understanding of inertial physics. Lieutenant Mavis stared in disbelief at her readouts. Sir, they're using some form of gravitational manipulation I've never encountered. Their acceleration curve is impossible. The vigilant horizon circled the larger hegemony vessel with predatory grace. Despite the obvious technological disparity in hull construction, the human ship moved with a precision that spoke of advanced propulsion systems carefully disguised beneath primitive-looking exteriors. Evasive pattern Krell 7, ordered Voskar. Charge main batteries. Sir, ventured Strategic Officer Lentax, perhaps we should attempt to de-escalate. If their weapons match their propulsion, the hegemony does not capitulate to unknown species, Voskar snapped. We represent 8,000 years of unified galactic civilization. Another communication from the human ship cut across their channel. Commander, your targeting systems are activating, Captain Renth observed coolly. I would strongly advise against this course of action. Voskar ignored the warning. Fire forward batteries. The unyielding mandate's main guns discharged, sending lances of coherent energy towards the vigilant horizon. What should have been a crippling first strike instead passed harmlessly through empty space. The human vessel had moved with impossible speed. They've anticipated our firing solution perfectly, Mavis reported, her voice hollow with realization. The scan. They wanted us to scan them. Understanding dawned on Voskar's face. The scan. We transmitted our targeting algorithms. A comprehensive scan contains mathematical patterns, Tactical Officer Nexri explained rapidly. Our targeting? Systems use those same patterns. They've extracted our firing sequences from the scan itself. Captain Renth's voice returned, a note of something like pity now evident. Your scan provided us with 94% of your tactical capabilities, Commander. We now understand your shield frequencies, weapon recharge rates, engine output limitations, and tactical algorithms. You'd be surprised how much information bleeds through in an invasive scan. As if to demonstrate, 3 small projectiles launched from the vigilant horizon, each following an erratic course that made no tactical sense to hegemony doctrine. Yet somehow, each projectile navigated precisely through gaps in the battlecruiser's defensive screen. Gaps that should have been impossible to predict. The impacts were surgical rather than devastating. Precision strikes that disabled the unyielding. Mandates primary weapons and propulsion systems without causing catastrophic damage. How? Voskar demanded as warning lights flashed across his command console. Those trajectories should have been impossible to calculate. Human warfare evolved differently, Captain Renth explained, almost academically. While most species developed space combat from the perspective of void engagement, we developed it from atmospheric dogfighting, 3-dimensional combat in variable pressure environments. We think differently about space. The bridge of the unyielding mandate fell silent as the implications sank in. Voskar's antennae drooped slightly. What are your terms? He asked finally. Transmission of all data you've collected on our vessel. Immediate withdrawal from this sector. Formal acknowledgement that the Corellian void is now contested space, requiring diplomatic resolution. Voskar bristled. The Hegemony Council will never... They will when they understand what happened here, Renth interrupted. When they learn that a single human warship neutralized a hegemony battlecruiser without suffering a single hit. When they realize what it means that we can extract tactical data from your own scans. Lieutenant Mavis approached Voskar, speaking quietly. Commander, analysis confirms they could have destroyed us completely. These precision strikes were deliberate restraint. Voskar's mandibles clicked in reluctant acknowledgement. Very well, Captain Renth. We will comply with your terms under protest. Excellent. One final thing, Commander. When you report to your council, make sure they understand. This wasn't our most advanced vessel. The Vigilant Horizon is a border patrol craft, what humans classify as a light frigate. Word spread quickly through the galactic hegemony. The incident in the Corellian Void was initially classified, but rumors escaped containment like wisps of nebula gas. Within a standard month, diplomatic channels were abuzz with reports of a new species whose defensive capabilities bordered on the mystical. In the austere chambers of the Hegemony High Council on Nexus Prime, Supreme Strategist, Ozavan reviewed the sensor logs from the unyielding mandate for the 7th time. "It makes no logical sense," she murmured, her elongated digits manipulating the holographic display. "Their hull composition is inferior to our standard alloys. Their visible weapon systems are rudimentary. Yet they anticipated every tactical maneuver with perfect precision." High Counselor Trebane, his ancient frame supported by a hovering exoskeleton, drifted closer to examine the footage. The historical archives show similar encounters with the Arvani Collective and the Mithral Republic, both extinct now. "Those are myths," Ozavan dismissed. "Tales to frighten subordinate species into compliance." "Perhaps," conceded Trebane. "But there's a common thread. Both reportedly developed counter-intrusion systems that weaponized the act of being scanned. The Mithral called it mirror warfare, turning an opponent's observation against them." Ozavan's scaled brow furrowed. "No species has successfully developed such technology. The quantum uncertainties alone would make it theoretically impossible. Unless," Trebane suggested, "these humans don't rely on certainty. Maybe they embrace probability in a way our deterministic approach to warfare cannot comprehend." Before Ozavan could respond, a junior strategist rushed into the chamber, protocol forgotten in their haste. "Supreme Strategist, High Counselor, we've received a transmission from the exploration vessel Infinite Discovery. They encountered another human ship at the edge of the Lantean expanse." "Casualties?" Ozavan asked sharply. "None, Supreme Strategist." The captain had received the classified briefing from the Corellian incident. They established communication before initiating any scans. Trebane's ancient eyes narrowed. "And?" "The humans invited our xenobiologists aboard. The meeting was enlightening." The junior strategist projected a series of images showing hegemony scientists conversing with humans in what appeared to be a medical bay. "They freely shared biological data?" Ozavan asked incredulously. This violated every security protocol the hegemony had established over millennia of interspecies relations. "Yes, Supreme Strategist, and more. They explained their defensive systems, at least partially. The humans call it Adaptive Response Integration Network. Their warships actually reconfigure their defensive algorithms based on the specific pattern of incoming scans." Trebane made a sound of ancient wisdom realized. "They use our own scans to create a perfect defensive key. It's more complex than that, High Counselor," the junior strategist continued. "Human ships maintain a continuous state of quantum flux in their defense systems. Thousands of potential configurations simultaneously maintained in probability states until an external scan forces pattern collapse into the exact configuration needed to counter the scanning species." "Schrodinger's defenses," whispered Ozavan, referencing an ancient theoretical concept. "Their systems exist in all possible defensive states until observed, then instantaneously become the precise configuration needed to counter the observer." "That's impossible," Trebane stated, though his voice lacked conviction. "The human captain said something our scientists found particularly troubling," the junior strategist added. When asked why they would reveal such a tactical advantage, the human replied, "What we've shown you is already outdated. The moment you understood it, we moved beyond it." Silence fell across the council chamber as the implications settled like heavy stardust. "There's more," the strategist continued, reluctantly. The humans have formally petitioned for diplomatic recognition and submitted territorial claims to 17 sectors, including the Corellian Void and parts of the Lantean Expanse. 17 sectors. Ozavan's voice rose in pitch. Based on what precedent? They claim these territories were colonized by automated human cedar ships over the past century. Our long-range scans showed no evidence of settlement. Because they weren't scanning for primitive technology, Trebayne realized. We've been looking for quantum signatures and gravitic distortions, hallmarks of advanced civilization. If the humans deliberately used basic technologies, we need to understand them better, Ozavan decided. Arrange a formal diplomatic meeting. No scanning, no aggressive posturing. Trebayne's ancient eyes held a rare emotion, concern. And if they're already within our core systems, watching and waiting, then they already know far more about us than we do about them, Ozavan admitted. And that is a tactical disadvantage I intend to remedy immediately. The diplomatic summit took place aboard the human diplomatic vessel Concordia, stationed in neutral space between hegemony territory and the newly declared human sphere of influence. Despite its designation as a diplomatic craft, even the untrained eye could discern the Concordia's military origins. Weapon ports carefully concealed beneath decorative panels, sensor arrays disguised as architectural elements. Ambassador Lorvix represented the hegemony, his translucent skin rippling with chromatophores that betrayed his nervous state despite his diplomatic training. Alongside him stood science emissary Peltar and military attaché Dorn, both veterans of numerous first-contact scenarios. The human delegation awaited them in a spacious chamber that seemed deliberately designed to accommodate diverse physiologies. Leading them was Ambassador Alara Koros, flanked by Admiral Dayu Ishikawa and Dr. Rashid Nasser. Welcome aboard the Concordia, Ambassador Koros greeted them, performing the hegemony gesture of non-aggression with surprising accuracy. We appreciate your willingness to engage in direct dialogue. The hegemony values peaceful resolution, Lorvix responded carefully. Though we must address the concerning military encounter in the Corellian Void and your extensive territorial claims. Admiral Ishikawa stepped forward, her bearing unmistakably military despite her diplomatic attire. The incident with the unyielding mandate was unfortunate but predictable. Throughout human history, first contact scenarios accompanied by uninvited scanning have resulted in conflict 94% of the time. You anticipated hostilities? Lorvix's chromatophores flashed indignation. We anticipated misunderstanding, corrected Dr. Nasser. Different species develop different protocols. What seems standard procedure to you, scanning an unknown vessel, registers as an aggressive act in human military doctrine. Military attaché. Dorn, unable to contain himself, interjected. Your defensive systems violate several known principles of quantum mechanics. The ability to instantaneously reconfigure based on scanning patterns is perfectly consistent with quantum mechanics as we understand it, Dr. Nasser finished. The difference is philosophical as much as technological. Where most species seek to eliminate uncertainty, we've learned to weaponize it. Ambassador Koros gestured toward a holographic display that materialized in the center of the room. We've prepared a demonstration that might help clarify our position. The display showed two identical-looking warships. Both vessels appear identical to your scanning systems, explained Admiral Ishikawa. Both would register the same power signatures, the same structural composition. Yet one is virtually impervious to your weapons, while the other would be destroyed by a single concentrated barrage. How is this possible? Science emissary Peltar asked, professional curiosity overriding diplomatic restraint. Quantum entanglement on a macroscopic scale, Dr. Nasser explained. When you scan a human warship, you're not observing its true defensive configuration. You're forcing a superposition collapse that creates a defensive pattern specifically tailored to counter your offensive capabilities. In simpler terms, Admiral Ishikawa added, seeing the confusion on the hegemony delegates' faces, Our ships maintain defensive systems in quantum flux until scanned. The act of scanning forces them to assume a specific state, one that precisely counters the scanning technology. That's why scanning a human warship is considered a death sentence among the few species who've encountered us in combat, Ambassador, Koros said quietly. Each scan provides us with more information than it gives you, creating an asymmetrical information exchange that favors the defender. Lorvix's chromatophores now displayed patterns of deep concern. If this is true, why reveal such a tactical advantage? Admiral Ishikawa smiled thinly. Because we prefer peace to war, Ambassador, and because what we've shown you is already being phased out in favor of systems you cannot yet conceive of. Is that a threat? Dorn asked stiffly. It's an invitation, countered Ambassador Koros. Humanity has developed along a different technological path than the hegemony. Where you pursued perfect knowledge through observation, we developed technologies that thrive on uncertainty. There is much we could learn from each other. Science emissary Peltar leaned forward. You're proposing technological exchange, after revealing military capabilities that could potentially undermine our entire defensive doctrine? We're proposing partnership, corrected Dr. Nasser. The universe is vast and largely unknown. The hegemony has 8,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Humanity has approached the same natural laws from a completely different perspective. Together, we could achieve far more than either civilization could alone. And the territorial claims, pressed Lorvix, are open to negotiation, Ambassador Koros assured him. Unlike our principles regarding uninvited scanning of military vessels, on that point, we remain absolutely firm. 6 galactic standard months after the summit aboard the Concordia, the hegemony found itself facing an unprecedented situation. For the first time in thousands of years, the dominant power in the known galaxy was engaged in negotiations with a species it could neither intimidate nor technologically overwhelm. The Human Hegemony Joint Scientific Commission had established headquarters on the neutral world of Vega Prime. There, under carefully negotiated protocols, scientists from both civilizations cautiously shared discoveries, while military strategists reassessed centuries of doctrine. Rin Valaris, once a junior researcher in the Hegemony Science Directorate, now served as liaison officer to the human contingent. She found herself constantly amazed by the cognitive dissonance the humans represented. Their seemingly primitive materials, science coupled with conceptual frameworks that defied conventional understanding. You need to understand, explained Dr. Amari Tobin, her human counterpart, as they walked through the research facility. Humans developed spaceflight while still using combustion engines and slide rules. We reached our moon using computers less powerful than a child's toy today. That's precisely what confuses us, Rin admitted. The evolutionary path of technology usually follows predictable patterns. Advanced computing leads to advanced propulsion, leads to advanced materials. You've somehow leapfrogged entire developmental stages. Dr. Tobin laughed. Because we kept hitting walls. When materials science couldn't give us better hull compositions, we developed better evasive algorithms. When conventional shields failed, we explored quantum uncertainty principles. Instead, they passed a laboratory where hegemony physicists watched in fascination as humans demonstrated a peculiar device, something they called a probability engine. Our entire approach to space warfare evolved from a position of material disadvantage. Tobin continued. Earth fought 3 interplanetary conflicts before achieving unified government. In each one, various factions found themselves outgunned, using outdated ships against superior forces. So you developed asymmetrical tactics, Rin deduced. We developed uncertainty as a weapon, corrected Tobin. The pinnacle was the adaptive response integration network, what you call Schrodinger's defenses. But that's already becoming obsolete. Because we now understand it? Partly. But mostly because understanding something doesn't necessarily mean you can counter it. Tobin gestured toward another laboratory where human and hegemony engineers worked side by side. Your scanning technology operates on principles discovered by the ancient hegemony physicist Lovar. Our defenses were specifically designed to exploit the Lavarian uncertainty principle. Rin stopped walking. How could you possibly know about Lavarian physics? His work predates your species' first radio transmissions. Tobin's expression became more guarded. Because physics is universal, Liaison Valaris. Different species may discover the same principles independently, even name them differently. What you call the Lavarian uncertainty principle, we named after a human physicist named Heisenberg. Before Rin could respond, her communication implant chimed with an urgent signal. Liaison Valaris, your presence is requested in the Strategic Operations Center immediately. Minutes later, Rin stood amongst senior officials from both species as holographic displays showed a massive, unidentified fleet emerging from uncharted space beyond the Cygnus expanse. First contact protocols have failed, announced Strategic Director Pevian. The unknown vessels have ignored all communication attempts and are maintaining an approach vector toward both hegemony and human space. Admiral Ishikawa studied the tactical projections. Their formation suggests a hive mind civilization. The symmetrical arrangement, the perfect spacing, classic indicators of collective consciousness. The hegemony has encountered 17 distinct hive mind species, noted Director Pevian. None displayed this level of coordination or technological advancement. Recommendation? Asked the hegemony's supreme strategist Ozavan, addressing both her staff and the human contingent. An unprecedented acknowledgement of the human's tactical acumen. Admiral Ishikawa exchanged glances with her human colleagues before responding. We need more information, but conventional scanning will alert them to our capabilities and intentions. What alternative do we have? Demanded Ozavan. We cannot formulate defense without intelligence. Dr. Nasser stepped forward. There is a third option, one we've been developing in the Joint Research Division. All eyes turned to him. We call it quantum ghost observation. Instead of active scanning, which transmits energy that can be detected and analyzed, we use entangled particles to observe without interaction. Theoretical impossibility, dismissed a hegemony scientist. The uncertainty principle prohibits simultaneous knowledge of complementary variables, Dr. Nasser interrupted. We don't seek complete knowledge, just sufficient tactical understanding without revealing our observation. For a moment, silence filled the command center. This technology was not part of our exchange agreement, Ozavan noted coldly. No, agreed Admiral Ishikawa. It wasn't. But circumstances have changed. We now face a common potential adversary. The question, Ambassador Koros said quietly, is whether the hegemony and humanity face this threat as allies or as separate powers. The combined human hegemony defense fleet assembled at the edge of the Cygnus expanse, an unprecedented cooperation between civilizations that, less than a standard year earlier, had been on the brink of conflict. 47 hegemony warships of various classes formed the outer perimeter, while 22 human vessels, including the newly commissioned Indomitable-class dreadnoughts, comprised the inner formation. Aboard the command ship Resolute Accord, itself a marvel of joint engineering, Fleet Admiral Koravashtari of the Human Federation stood alongside Hegemony Grand Marshal Zivalax, watching as the mysterious fleet continued its implacable advance. Quantum ghost observation confirms our initial assessment, reported Lieutenant Commander Nix Orbital, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The approaching vessels share a distributed consciousness. They're not merely coordinated, they're extensions of a single entity. The confluence, murmured Grand Marshal Zivalax, mandibles clicking in ancient recognition. They were thought to be merely legend, a cautionary tale from the early days of the hegemony. Admiral Vashtari turned sharply. You recognize this species? Not a species, corrected Zivalax. A technological singularity that consumed its creators. According to our oldest archives, the confluence once threatened the nascent hegemony 12,000 years ago before retreating into uncharted space. And now they've returned, Vashtari observed grimly, with significantly advanced technology. The main view screen displayed the results of the quantum ghost observation, detailed schematics of the confluence vessels without triggering their awareness of being scanned. The ships were biomechanical constructs, each connected to the others through quantum channels that allowed instantaneous communication and coordination. Their tactical advantage has always been perfect information sharing, explained Zivalax. No lag, no misinterpretations, every unit acting with complete knowledge of all others. Strategic Officer Merrick Solis, representing Human Tactical Command, stepped forward. Then we have a potential advantage they won't expect. Our quantum ghost observation gives us intelligence without alerting them, and our ship's defensive quantum flux means they can't predict our capabilities through conventional scanning. They're accelerating, announced Lieutenant Commander Orbital. Intercept in 17 minutes. Admiral Vashtari addressed the combined fleet through the command channel. All vessels, implement Operation Uncertainty Cascade. Hegemony units will maintain conventional defensive posture. Human vessels will execute random quantum state shifts every 90 seconds. The confluence expects predictability. We'll give them chaos. The massive fleet began its carefully orchestrated dance. Hegemony vessels moved with mathematical precision, each maneuver calculated to draw attention and scanning. Meanwhile, the human ships performed seemingly erratic course changes, their defensive systems fluctuating through thousands of configurations per minute. They're scanning the hegemony vanguard, reported Orbital. Massive energy surge. They're preparing to fire. The lead confluence vessel unleashed a blinding beam of coherent energy that struck the hegemony battlecruiser Eternal Vigilance. For a moment, it seemed the ship would be vaporized. Then the impossible happened. The beam reflected, redirected by previously concealed human defense platforms that had been synchronized to the exact frequency of the confluence weapon. The redirected energy struck another confluence vessel, cutting through its biomechanical hull. How? Began Zivalax. Quantum entanglement, explained Strategic Officer Solis. The defense platforms were entangled with the hegemony ships. When the confluence scanned your vessels, they inadvertently collapsed the quantum state of our platforms into the perfect reflective configuration. Understanding dawned in Zivalax's compound eyes. You used our ships as bait. With your full knowledge and consent, reminded Admiral Vashtari. Phase 2, all units. The human vessels suddenly accelerated toward the confluence fleet. Their movements no longer chaotic, but precisely coordinated. Each ship targeted a specific confluence vessel, bombarding it not with conventional weapons, but with focused scanning beams. What are they doing? Demanded Zivalax. Weaponizing curiosity, Solis explained with grim satisfaction. The confluence operates as a distributed consciousness. When scanned, it instinctively scans back to understand the threat and triggers the human defensive cascade, finished Zivalax in dawning comprehension. Brilliant and terrible. One by one, the confluence vessels that actively scanned human warships found themselves caught in recursive feedback loops. Their attempt to understand the constantly shifting quantum states of the human defenses created information paradoxes in their distributed consciousness. The hive mind is fragmenting, reported Orbital. We're detecting autonomous behavior from individual confluence units. The collective is breaking down. Admiral Vashtari turned to Zivalax. Now, Grand Marshal, while they're individualized and vulnerable, the hegemony fleet surged forward, their conventional but overwhelming firepower now directed at confluence vessels operating without the tactical advantage of their collective intelligence. The battle transformed from an even confrontation to a decisive rout. In the aftermath, as debris from destroyed confluence vessels drifted through space and the surviving enemy ships retreated toward the galactic rim, Admiral Vashtari and Grand Marshal Zivalax stood in contemplative silence on the observation deck of the Resolute Accord. 8,000 years of hegemony military doctrine, Zivalax finally spoke, and never once did we consider weaponizing the very act of observation. That's because you sought certainty, Vashtari replied. Humans embraced uncertainty from the beginning. Our entire history is defined by incomplete information and adapting to the unknown. The treaty will proceed, decided Zivalax. The combined council must be informed that the balance of power has fundamentally changed. The hegemony and humanity must become true allies, not mere diplomatic partners. Admiral Vashtari gazed out at the stars, where human and hegemony ships now moved in coordinated patterns, no longer separated by suspicion. We've changed the fundamental equation. For millennia, the rule of space combat was simple. Superior information meant superior tactical advantage. And now? Asked Zivalax. Now, the most dangerous thing in known space is to try to gather information about a human warship, Vashtari answered, because in doing so, you tell us exactly how to defeat you. A paradox worthy of your Heisenberg, acknowledged Zivalax. The more precisely you try to observe us, the less certain your victory becomes, finished Vashtari. That's why scanning a human warship is a death sentence, not because of what you learn about us, but because of what we learn about you in the process. As if to emphasize her point, the distant human dreadnought quantum paradox pulsed briefly with energy, its systems automatically reconfiguring in response to some distant, curious scan from an unknown observer somewhere among the stars. The universe is watching, murmured Zivalax. Let them watch, replied Admiral Vashtari. Observation is no longer the advantage they believe it to be.